Welcome back to Gaslight Alley in Nelson, where we're investigating the legend of the phantom windbreaker of Old Nelson Town. It's David Blaxhall with you, taking you through till midnight tonight. If you're just joining us and you've not heard the story, the legend of Shazad Dickens, the phantom windbreaker of Old Nelson Town, let's just hear what local historian Catherine Maxwell had to say earlier on in the programme.
The story dates back to 1882 and concerns this gentleman, Shazad Dickens, but he wasn't originally known as the curry house owner. He was known as the professional and celebrity windbreaker. Because remember that at the end of the 19th century, music halls were filled with unusual acts. And Shazad Dickens, well, his particular talent was such that he could break wind with such ferocity and strength, thus producing musical sounds the likes of which were unheard of. As a result of this, Dickens was the toast of the music halls throughout not just this country, but Europe as well. So he could make a reasonable living from this type of talent. So Mr. Dickens realised he was a fairly entrepreneurial spirit, and he recognised that the stage life of this particular act may not continue indefinitely. So he bought a property in Gaslight Alley in Nelson, and Shazad, who was a forward-thinking sort of man, truly ahead of his time, and unfortunately this proved his downfall, because he converted his little shop into a curry house. Now in 19th century Nelson, the staple diet was tripe and onions, black pudding, hot pot, pig's trotters, you know, the more traditional fare. And so he wasn't perhaps as popular initially as he would have been if he'd started up today. Things would have been fine, but for one weakness. Mr. Dickens thought waste was the worst sin possible, so he consumed every leftover, and there were often many. Well, you can imagine the consequences. His excessive curry consumption led to a build-up of internal gases that resulted in the most tragic and explosive death imaginable. He is recorded as one of the few men to truly spontaneously combust. And that in itself is an amazing feat. So ever since that desperately sad night, there have been numerous reports of phantom trumpeting, the likes of which you cannot imagine. The sounds, the noxious stenches have not been experienced anywhere else in the world, except in Gaslight Alley, Nelson, on the exact spot where Shazad Dickens' curry house previously stood.
Local historian Catherine Maxwell there telling us the story, the legend of the phantom windbreaker of Old Nelson Town. We're coming to you live on Halloween 2004 from Gaslight Alley in Nelson, and I have to say at this moment in time there are no obnoxious smells, no noises, nothing other than the wind on the microphone. It's quite eerie down here, I have to say. The only smell that we have got is the aroma from the saucy samosa, the takeaway, the fast food takeaway at the top of Gaslight Alley. That's where we're going to be going next, because you might remember 2 years back we went to the fish and chip shop at the top of Gaslight Alley. That's now the saucy samosa, and that's where we're going to be going to next. Live on Halloween 2004, it's 99.8 FM to Beyond. We're coming to you live from Gaslight Alley in Nelson for Halloween 2004. We're continuing our investigation into the legend of the phantom windbreaker of Old Nelson Town. Now, you might remember, if you cast your minds back 2 years to Halloween 2002, when we came to Gaslight Alley, we went to the fish and chip shop at the top of Gaslight Alley. Now, since then, in fact, only 3 months ago, Albert Ramsbottom fried his last fish and chips. And then in came Muzzadik Ali Hussain, recently come to this country. He converted the fish and chip shop into the saucy samosa. Now, earlier on today, I spoke to Muzzadik, and he explained to me that even some of his customers have experienced things down here in Gaslight Alley.
करीब 3 महीने पहले से हम यहाँ पे समोसे बेच रहे हैं और यहाँ अजीब सी आवाजें आ रही हैं जैसे wind breaking हो रहा है. Well, since I started the saucy samosa 3 months ago, a number of my customers have heard strange wind breaking sounds just down the alley here. Quite often it's at 2 and 3 in the morning. So I don't think that it is simply kids playing here. You could argue that after a lot of alcohol, people can imagine they have heard something. But some of my customers are taxi drivers, and being Muslim never touch alcohol. And some of them have heard of trumping sounds. On top of that, there is the atrocious stench that seems to fill the alley at times. I've been in touch with the local council, but they can't find any problems with the drains. It's all very strange.
Muzzadik Ali Hussain there explaining to me earlier that even he, as a newcomer to Nelson, is totally perplexed by the strange happenings down here in Gaslight Alley. Now, very, very shortly, we're going to be leaving the Saucy Samosa fast food takeaway at the top here of Gaslight Alley and heading off back into the darkness, into the cold of Gaslight Alley. It's 99.8 FM 2BR coming to you live from Nelson for Halloween 2004. We're investigating the legend of the Phantom Windbreaker of Old Nelson Town. Welcome back to Gaslight Alley in Nelson, where tonight we're investigating the legend of the Phantom Windbreaker of Old Nelson Town. Let's just again capture the atmosphere here in the alleyway. Very, very quiet, other than the wind blowing on the microphone. Absolutely nothing at the moment. We're still taking your telephone calls. We've had absolutely loads and loads of telephone calls. A big thanks to Dave and the team back at Lancashire who are taking all calls. And Steph in Cone has said that her dog started barking at the radio the moment we came down the alley and did the first broadcast from the alley. The dog just went absolutely mad. Neil in Accrington, he's called us to say that at the moment we did the first link from Gaslight Alley, all the power went off at his home. It's still off at the moment, and he's having to listen to 2BR on a battery radio. Debbie in Nelson, she says that ever since you did that first link from Gaslight Alley, not before it, but only when you went to Gaslight Alley, there's been an awful smell, an atrocious stench that's filled the room where I'm listening to the radio. She said, I don't know what the reason is for it, and it's certainly not the baby. And finally, Faz in Burnley. Now, Faz has given us a call. He says that he's been psychic ever since the age of 12 years old. He's picking up on some very, very bad vibes tonight. He says, really, I would advise you to leave Gaslight Alley. He says, I really think that there could be something there, not just the spirit of Shazad Dickens, there could be something more sinister as well. He said, I really do advise you to leave. We're not going to do. It might be a little bit foolhardy, but we're going to stay down here until midnight tonight. You're joining us live in Gaslight Alley in Nelson because we're investigating the legend of the Phantom Windbreaker of Old Nelson Town. And very shortly, we're going to be hearing about how tourists around the world have now picked up on the legend. Live from Nelson on Halloween 2004, it's David Blaxhall with you through till midnight on 99.8 FM 2BR.